Let's do it.
Well, everybody, welcome back to another exciting episode of the Storybox podcast. Today, I'm delighted to welcome Dr. Stefi Cohen. Now, Dr. Stefi Cohen, for those of you that don't know or have seen her work, she's an absolute machine when it comes to workouts, powerlifting, boxing, the whole work. She's absolutely crazy. Go look at her stuff. You'll know what I'm talking about. But she's a 25 times world record holding powerlifter and the first woman in the history of the sport to deadlift 4.4 times her own body weight, which is, crazy. She's a doctor of physical therapy, author, co-host of Hybrid Unlimited podcast, and business owner, passionately educating people with her no BS, evidence-based view on all things training and nutrition. She is the co-owner of Hybrid Performance Method, where hundreds of thousands of strength seekers go monthly to find progressive strength training and nutrition programs, plus tons of free articles and videos. You can go look at all her stuff. She's not hard to find. She's got a new book out called Back in Motion, which you can go and order now and get your own copy. So Dr. Stefi Cohen, welcome so much to the Storybox podcast today.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's an absolute pleasure to have you here. Before we dive into, I guess, your backstory, how you got started doing all this, what this is all about, I have one question I love asking all my guests at the very, very start, which is, what does success look like for you?
That's a good question. I was preparing for the Tim Ferriss podcast recently, and that was one of the questions that he prompted me with. I really think it has to do with your own personal definition of success. And I think it comes in many shapes and forms. To some, success might be financially driven, to some might be building a family, to some might be building personal relationships and whatnot. To me personally, success involves the impact that you have on other people's lives. So, it sounds cheesy to say, I want to help as many people as possible. But honestly, I feel like the more resources I have, the more I can grow my business, the more money I can save, the more I can free up my time to think about ways to service others, essentially. So if I can find a way to, not only enjoy what I'm doing, monetize it, but also find a way to bring meaning to other people's lives, that's what success looks like to me.
When was the moment for you that you realized that really impact was success for you? Has it been sort of like this gradual thing over time, or is there a catalyst moment more recently that you started thinking about it when you went on Tim Ferriss's show?
Yeah, I don't know. I think over the years, my definition and perspective on success has changed, morphed, just based on life lessons exist. I think it became more and more apparent the more I grew my business and the more money I made, because I realized the power that gives you, right? Like you can do a lot of good if you have a lot of resources, if you have a lot of connections, if you have enough free time. Mm. So it became more apparent just the more financially successful that I became.
Mm. Did you grow up with money? Did you come from money at all?
No. So I grew up in Venezuela. Middle-class family, humble beginnings. My parents supported me through high school. And then in college, I kind of was a little bit more on my own, still had the support of them, but, definitely didn't come from money, came from middle-class family. Hardworking though.
Mm. So they taught you the value of hard work and determination and grit, really, from a young age.
Absolutely, yeah. My dad's a hustler. He's an entrepreneur, business owner. So is my mom. So in growing up in a country like Venezuela, that's a third world country where the path for you, at least like the professional path, is not clearly delineated as much as it is here in the States. Here you kind of like go to college, or go to high school, go to college, find a job, and there's so many options. There's so many things that you can do, whereas we're very limited in what we can do and even what we can study. I didn't even know physical therapy was a profession until I moved here to the States and I was in my second year of college. So, just having to figure out things for yourself and having to create your own path with very limited resources in a country that is just not conducive to do so, gives you some interesting skills. You know, my friends that I keep in touch with that live here in the States are so resourceful. Just starting with, actually, this is a lady that I just recently met. She's my interior designer. Her name's Julia. It's so amazing to see how she does things, comparing her to another designer who is American. Just finding, you know, oh no, this is costing too much with these people. I'm gonna go bargain at, you know, in Hialeah in the ghetto here in Miami, find a welder that doesn't, you know, she's so resourceful. Like, she just goes in these rabbit holes and just tries to problem solve using her imagination, using her creativity, and using her street smartness. So I think it's more so related to my upbringing, I guess.
So speaking about that limitation, being in Venezuela and not having the same, I guess, opportunities available to you as what you would get, say, in the States or even here in Australia, how did that really shape your identity of self and purpose and worth?
I mean, I always knew that I didn't want to work for anybody. I have a really hard time following rules. Stupid rules, especially. I understand. Look. Hold on. Let me backtrack here. I understand why rules exist, all right? Like, if not, it would be complete anarchy. If not, it would be Venezuela. But, you know, I like a little bit more flexibility, and I like to be able to express myself creatively, and I don't like to be pigeonholed in one box kind of thing. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't have a concrete answer for you. I don't really know, but, all I knew was that I wanted to be my own boss, and I wanted to create a job for myself that gave me freedom of time and place. I think I'm dancing around your question. What was your question again? I tend to do
it was towards shaping your identity of self and worth and purpose, and I guess really knowing what you wanted to be when you grew up, having that limitation around you.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, look, the only thing I knew for a fact growing up was that I wanted to be rich and famous. I remember being 8 years old, and it was one of the first times that I came to the States with my family. And I went to Foot Locker, and I stood in front of the mirror. There was a massive poster of Mia Hamm at the store. And I tried on some soccer cleats. I'm in front of the mirror, and I'm like practicing my kick. And I tell my mom, one day I'm going to be rich and famous. And that was the beginning of it all. Like, I just wanted to, I didn't know at that point, it might have, I don't know, maybe it was just childish. Like, I didn't really understand what that meant, and I didn't have, like a clear path of exactly what that would look like. But, you know, at least I knew what direction I wanted to go into.
I can relate to that on many different levels, but more specifically, I went to business college. I didn't want to go to business college. I wanted to be a filmmaker. And then when I went to business college, I had one particular, I had my own version of success, which was very similar. Growing up, it was like, I wanted money. Growing up in a lower class family here in Sydney, Australia, I wanted the money. I wanted to be rich and famous. Same deal, but it's film. And then when I went to business college, I thought I had a teacher that actually came up to me and said, "You're going to be successful one day." And immediately my brain went to, having lots of money, having the nice cars, the fame, the wealth, you name it. But then I don't think that's what he meant at all. I think he saw how hard I actually work, because having that hustler mentality. And I think it's like when you have that ambition, that goal that you set for yourself when you're young, you go after it. And I'm curious for you, Steffi, like, what was the trajectory going from, okay, I want to be rich and famous, to actually working towards becoming, I guess, successful, rich, and you are famous now. So what was...
I'm famous in a very small niche, which is pretty nice. I like it.
Yeah. What was it like for you? So did you go to college in Venezuela, or I think you came to the States, I believe?
Yeah, so I moved here when I was 17 initially with a soccer scholarship. Ended up not taking that and just focusing on my school. Changed majors like 5 times. I didn't really know exactly what or how or when. I didn't have, I was never the type of person that would sit down and have like their 2, 5, 10, 15, 20-year plan and have everything mapped out. I've never been like that. I'm more so kind of focused on the present and focused on trying to make myself 1% better every day in anything. It didn't have to be something directly related to the field of study that I was in. It could have been, improving my communication skills. I took a bunch of public speaking classes, for example, trying to be a better friend, trying to make myself memorable when I meet other people. Are they remembering who I am and my name? How good am I about following up? How good am I about, am I making an effort in sending thank you letters when I meet somebody that I want to keep in touch with? It's like all of these kind of little skills that you accumulate during the years that kind of are stepping stones towards something bigger that you don't even know what it might be. So, there were many moments of uncertainty where I just wasn't sure if I was even in the right path or if I was doing the right things or doing enough. But I just, with a little bit of trust and faith in myself, I kind of just kept going. There were definitely days where in time periods of my life where I was terrified, didn't really know what was going to happen. But again, just chipping at it and acquiring as many useful life practical skills as possible. So I ended up changing my majors a bunch of times, ended up studying exercise physiology, sports medicine, graduated University of Miami. Thought that I wanted to go into exercise physiology, work as doing VO2 max tests, cardiovascular tests, helping people with their nutrition, that kind of stuff. Realized that the job market was extremely limited and wanted to expand my options. It wasn't, at that time, it wasn't necessarily that I wanted to be a physical therapist or that I was really passionate about it, but I wanted to expand my knowledge and expand my options because, the biggest issue that most people run into is when you are cornered and you only have one choice. For example, I've met so many boxers over the last little while who all they have is boxing. And I just can't understand that. Like that would stress me out so much. It would make me so anxious, not only having one thing. And what if you get injured? What if something happens? What if whatever, So keeping my options open and keeping them as broad as possible. That's essentially kind of how I got into physical therapy school. I wanted to have a career that allowed me to speak in an authoritative way, like with authority about certain topics about health and fitness. I wanted to be respected in the field. And man, it paid off so much, even though I don't practice in the traditional sense, I don't see patients in clinic. I use my knowledge from PT school every day. My ability to think critically, my ability to interpret research, my ability to focus on things for long periods of time, and just having the degree, man, just having those two letters at the beginning of my name have just opened so many doors. So, then from there, I think it was my first year of PT school, we started hybrid, and I essentially was using the knowledge that I was gaining in PT school to write articles. We grew a pretty large and organic email list where we were sending these articles to, and I try to incorporate as much like entertainment into it as possible, which I think was one of the differentiating factors between me and the other nerds that write, is that I'm scientific, but I'm also very creative, and I can dumb things down and put them in a way with analogies and other techniques that make people, make complex topics easy to understand, essentially. And that's how it all started. That's how hybrid got started. I don't know why I'm even telling you about hybrid, because that's not what you asked for, but that's essentially the trajectory. That's essentially a trajectory that led me to where I am. No,
because hybrid sort of leads that all that you're mentioning kind of leads to hybrid, which is pretty cool.
Leads to hybrid and the rich and the fame and the richness.
Yeah, which we'll get into in a moment. But what I'm curious about is you mentioned there for a moment you're creative. You're very creative, and I'm curious, what is your creative process like? What do you go through? Do you exercise to be more creative? What happens for you?
It really depends on what I'm working on. But for the most part, it's having free time. like having time where you just are not doing anything, not even watching TV. You're just like sitting down in a park and you're just thinking, being observant of the world around you and trying to find solutions to common problems.
Do you get a lot of free time?
What's that?
Do you get a lot of free time?
Not a lot, but I get enough. I purposefully give myself some free time. And that's where the whole thing about being a boss comes in, and being able to delegate and being able to focus on tasks that only you can do, and other skills that I've learned as a business owner. But I think mostly, it comes from, I think creativity stems from having an inquisitive mind, being curious about the world around you, being observant, and open in all of your senses, just looking around and looking at art and listening to music and like trying to solve problems,
For me, my creative outlet is exercise. I've got to wake up early in the morning. I've got to go out and literally get in fresh air, get in nature, feel like I'm grounded in that. And then my brain just goes to work. And my mum says that I have this massive problem, like it doesn't stop. And I'm always curious, because I've always been thinking of new ideas. How can I better myself in this and that, my business, all this stuff. And it just doesn't shut itself off. And I like how you mentioned you've got to go and find that place just to sit there in nature. And I'm curious, with your busy schedule, which is no doubt crazier than mine, how does one create that life for themselves?
In what way? How do I schedule my time so I can have some time for myself? Or
how do you manage your days so you can actually get a little bit of time for yourself?
So, I schedule my week so that there's full days that are catered for something specific, instead of trying to bounce around. So I've tried the whole thing of okay, I'm going to wake up at 6. From 6 to 7, I'm going to be in my flow state, and I'm going to get in my sauna, and I'm going to meditate, and I'm going to think about, no, I've tried that whole thing, and that whole bouncing around in a day and that whole bouncing around in a day just doesn't work for me. So the way that I schedule my week is Mondays and Wednesdays are my podcast and media days. So I just sit down here. I'm a guest in 5 podcasts today, for example. So that's just easy for me, right? I do my hair and makeup once, I sit here and I talk, right, for 5 hours. In the morning, I did my training and filmed some educational videos, and that's it. So I know it's a 12-hour day where all I'm doing is media and podcasting. Then Tuesdays and Thursdays, I give myself more time to train. So I have a double day, train for 6 hours. In the morning, I answer my emails, and I kind of schedule the things for the rest of the days. Then Fridays is kind of a miscellaneous day where I do everything. And then the weekend is a little bit more, usually, and now with the pandemic, it hasn't been that much, but it's starting to pick up again, been more for networking. So I live in Miami. It's a place where everybody always needs an excuse to come here. And I kid you not, my house is an Airbnb. Every week there's somebody in town. There's someone there to entertain, which is great. I'm not complaining. I love it. But a lot of my time also has to be allocated towards that networking, being on other people's YouTubes and whatever, nurturing friendships, that kind of stuff.
Which, if you go to your YouTube, which is pretty cool. I love the collaborations. You did one recently with Fraser. I think you boxed together, which is pretty cool to see. I'm always curious, people that actually have crazy schedules, how they go about managing it. I think it's very useful for someone like myself, or a young person that thinks I don't have the time, to actually schedule their life appropriately. So if you can do it, Steffi, and your schedule is much more crazier than mine is, then anyone can do it, really.
And I've been way busier than I am now, especially when I was in school. What helps me is just doing what you have to do when you have to do it. There's no secret. It's like you just prioritize. What's the most important thing for you right now? Okay, that's what comes first. Everything else, it comes second whenever you get a chance to do it. That's how school was for me, right? I was worried about staying in school. My program was extremely rigorous and very strict about attendance and about grades, about passing tests. So that was my main priority. Anything else kind of just was in the passenger seat, and I did whenever I could, which is why during grad school, I took everything out from my living room and I put a squat rack and a platform. And I would, as I'm studying in between my squats, I would sit down and study, or in between my sessions in there. So you just kind of do what you have to do to keep things moving in the right direction with no excuses.
Where did you fall in love with weightlifting or powerlifting in the first place? How did that come about?
This is going to be okay. I joke about this, but honestly, it's the truth. Weightlifting, powerlifting kind of found me. I never really fell in love with it, if I'm being completely honest. I've always been into sports, mostly team sports, and sports that require a lot more like expression of fitness and athleticism that involve many other aspects of performance. And I don't know, it started with CrossFit. I wanted to get my legs stronger, my weightlifting, my Olympic weightlifting better. That's kind of how I landed in weightlifting and made progress so fast that I couldn't not do it kind of thing. Like I was found by a coach that trained a bunch of Olympians, and his name's Camilo, and he was pretty much like, listen, like you can go to the Olympics, you can win. So he coached me for 3-4 years. I got all the way to, I think I was ranked like number 2 here in the US. I just didn't have a passport at US citizenship, so I couldn't really compete. Then I got into grad school. That kind of fell through the cracks. And then just literally as in an attempt to maintain my strength for the purpose of weightlifting, because my intention was to continue competing in weightlifting, I got into powerlifting. The first time that I was encouraged to try a deadlift, I did 315. And from then on, I broke my first world record, I think 8 months into lifting. And again, just progressed so fast that I was even curious to see what this machine could do. I'm like, how much can I actually do? I was just curious, honestly. But in terms of like passion and enjoyment and love for the sport, I love the community aspect of the sport and the people that it's brought me together with, and the doors that it's opened. I'm so grateful for that. But just speaking strictly about me and my enjoyment for the sport while I'm training, it was pretty brutal. It's been pretty brutal because it very quickly became my job and my responsibility. It was never a hobby, because from the moment I started powerlifting was the moment that hybrid started, and that responsibility of like performing well at meets, continuously breaking records, looking a certain way, showing up to 5-6 meets in a year. That was a full-time job. That was stressful. That wasn't a hobby. That wasn't enjoyable. There was a lot of pressure. And yeah, I mean, I just kind of was doing it because I had to.
You brought up a very interesting point there about the way someone looks. And I'm curious for you, Steffi, have you ever had a lot of backlash from people that say, oh, you're too muscly, you're not meant to look like that? What would you say to those sort of people?
Look, I mean, we're all human, and obviously to a certain extent, we are affected by the way that people perceive us and their comments and what people say. And even more so, evolutionarily speaking, our brains are wired to remember those instances in which people tell us negative things as a survival mechanism. Because what happens is, you want to remember those bad things so you can avoid threatening and dangerous and negative situations. So it's so common for people to get, 10 positive comments, 1 negative comment, and all you do is focus on that negative one.
Yep.
And the reason why I know this is because obviously I was very afflicted initially when, I'm putting myself out there and I'm receiving all of these, all this negative criticism and negative comments towards my appearance, towards what I say, towards what I do. And it was a process, it took a lot of therapy, and it took a lot of working on myself and trying to understand the human mind a little bit better for me to be more at peace with being in the public eye and being on the receiving end of many, negative comments. It's just, now I see it for what it is, man. Like, the reality is that there's always going to be an unhappy person and it's like not even about you, it's about them. Like, they are unhappy. They're projecting it on you. They're jealous of like the fact that you can be ripped and muscular and successful. And once you're okay with that it's just it's a them issue, and if you truly like the way that you look, you just kind of like learn to deflect that and learn to focus a lot more on the people that support you and the positive comments. So obviously, look, there's a set of unwritten rules about society's expectations for women and how they're supposed to look, and guidelines and boundaries for beauty and whatnot. And I'd be lying if I say I don't try to conform to those rules and norms to a certain extent, because I absolutely do. I think most people do to a certain extent, because we want to be accepted. We want to be well regarded by our peers, our friends, by the media, by society. So to a certain degree, I do. But I think that I've done a good job at staying true to myself and to a certain extent doing what makes me happy, right? And looking how I want to look without trying to not let people's opinions influence that or affect me as much.
Have you ever struggled being in your own skin at all?
Yeah, so much. And I still do. Yeah, I think especially growing up. And so this is what I struggled with. And it's actually a well-known psychological phenomenon. It's called the female athlete paradox. And it's something that I've started doing research about, because I really want to write a book about it. And I want to interview other female athletes to just see how they felt and how they've navigated through it and how they've evolved and all that stuff. It's kind of an identity clash that happens in girls' brains when we're playing sports. And on one end, we want to be competitive. We want to be aggressive. We want to be, loud, and we want to be taken seriously by boys, and we want to be taken seriously by our coaches and whatnot. And then there's the other side, obviously, that we're women, and we identify with being a woman, and part of us wants to put makeup on and get our nails done and get dressed up and be told that you're sexy and feminine and beautiful, right? So there's this like crazy dichotomy going on in our brains at all times where we really struggle with juggling that. So for me, my transition into allowing myself to be more vulnerable, to be more feminine, to be more sexually comfortable is as of like the last year. Like, I can talk about that breakthrough that I had, but up until that point, up until this time last year, I was still battling with that a lot and just really suppressing my feminine side because I wanted to be respected and taken seriously, and because I'm an academic and I want to be, I feel like if I deviate slightly from that, I'm not going to be, people are going to think differently about me. So I hid behind baggy joggers and baggy shirts and hats and not doing my hair and not wearing makeup for so many years. And it was really affecting the way that I even perceived myself. It was affecting my relationship, my confidence as a woman. And then I grew up, I guess. But it's crazy. It really is that it's a lot of, the more I talk about it and the more I get together with other girls, the more I realize how widespread the issue is. So I just, I hope that the more I learn about it, maybe if I can write this book, bring more clarity, normalize the topic a bit more too.
I think it'd be a much needed book for a lot of people. And this is a needed conversation that we need to be having, because especially in today's society, there's a lot of negativity towards body dysmorphia, the way somebody looks or acts, and like that's not beauty. They can't be beautiful. Like you look at models and you think, oh, we've been inbred to think that a skinny person walking down a runway, that's beauty. Like we're admiring them, or a woman, for example, or even a man gets caked up and they're photoshopped to oblivion, and we think that's beauty. That's what it is. When really there's so much more to it than that. Like it's real beauty is not just the way we look on the exterior. It's what's inside. It's our purpose. I really believe that. And I think, because I struggle with the same thing. I thought that I was ugly. I thought that no one would love me. I thought that I was fat for many years, believe it or not. And it's kind of like the opposite approach. Like when you're skinny, you think you're fat. When you're fat, you think you're skinny. That for me kind of led me down this really dark path of unbelief, of addictions to different things.
How did you get over it?
It was a process, Steffi. Like the first time I ended up in hospital for 9 days as a result of my addiction and the way I saw myself. And then even after that, I ended up with other health conditions that it was kind of like I was being forced in a way, like my body was just not taking it. And then until finally it just snapped, like a light bulb went off in my head. And it's like, I've got to heal from this. I've got to get help. And how do I get help? I've got to talk to somebody. I've got to ask somebody a question, and maybe they can help me work through this trauma, these addictions. So that's how I helped, I guess, myself, by asking other people. I think I removed that fear of judgment of what other people are going to think of me. And I'm curious, how did you have your breakthrough? Was it very similar to me? Did you go to somebody and ask them?
Man, I had kind of an epiphany last year. I randomly met this couple, Mike and Christina, and they're professional photographers. They focus on female photography and video. They do a lot of like OnlyFans type stuff. And yeah, and their whole mission is to again break that stereotype of what is perceived beautiful and what isn't by society, and really try to teach everyone, really try to teach their viewers that everybody is beautiful. It just depends on your perspective and on your personal preferences, right? So I met them at a dinner party, and we started talking about the same topic. They showed me some of the pictures. I was like, I would never feel comfortable doing something like that. I'm not confident enough in the way that I look. My ass isn't as big as those other girls, and my legs are too big, and my back, like I would feel really uncomfortable. I'm not feminine. I could never wear that kind of stuff. And they were like, well, whenever you're ready, we would love to support you. We're going to hold your hand and help you through the whole shoot, and you'll see how much you're going to love it. You're going to see yourself in a different light. Took a few months. Eventually I bit, and I scheduled a photo shoot with them, and they planned all my outfits. They helped me out with all of that. They did my hair, they did my makeup. And it was a really uncomfortable shoot because it was something I had never done. I've only posed for fitness stuff, weights and like really hold my breath, that kind of stuff. And man, the second I saw those pictures afterwards, like even just like in their camera, I'm like, wow, I really am beautiful, like in a different way, right? Like I was right. I don't look like those girls. I look different, and that's totally fine. I still look beautiful. And it was a complete 180 change in the way that I saw myself, just literally through a different lens, through somebody else's lens. And it was just so interesting. And then just through Dexter, and then just through starting a conversation on my own social media about how I felt and the reasons why I had never done anything like that, talking about objectifying, sexualizing women and the female athlete paradox and how much I struggle with like balancing my masculine, my feminine side. And just starting a conversation about that just helped me so much. And I honestly, did I get some negative criticism? Of course, but I got so much positive from it. And ultimately, independently of what people think or say about it, it was for me, right? My perspective about myself changed because I finally understood that it sounds cheesy again, but beauty's in the eye of the beholder. You know, it all depends on who's looking.
I think when we look at beauty, I think you're right. Everyone is beautiful in
their own way.
In their own way. Like we all have our quirks, like each and every one of us. And that's what makes us unique and amazing. That's what makes us human. Like when we tear someone down because of that, that is only going to make them feel like they're not worth anything, which is like not true at all. And that's what happened to me. Like I was bullied, I was ridiculed, and I thought, okay, it starts with a thought and then it becomes a belief. The more you think about it, the more you start believing it. And then the more you start practicing your behaviors, they get worse and worse and worse. And it leads you down very dark periods of your life, which shouldn't be the case. But, you know, here's another beautiful thing. When we do go through it and we come out the other side, we're now able to help somebody else that is going through a similar thing. So I think there's reasons for why we go through what we go through. There's definitely a lot of negative that needs to be uprooted in our society today and changed and turned around to something that is positive. And if you do have a problem, go and seek help. Like I speak about that all the time. Like if you do have an issue with the way you look, or like for me, example, it was more towards my voice. And I thought that I sounded terrible. And yet I'm doing a podcast or I talk too much, and all these things like self-doubt, you just got to learn how to manage it properly. Like when the thought comes in, squash it. So I appreciate you sharing all that, Steffi. It's really helpful. And I hope someone listening to this is helped and is inspired by your journey and everything that you're doing. A few more questions for you, if you don't mind, Steffi, because I want to be respectful of your time.
No. We can keep going.
Your book, Back in Motion. Now, talk to me about the idea of being back in motion. Where did you come up with this idea? And was it hard to write?
So initially, what inspired me or what motivated me to write the book was my own experience with back pain and injuries in general. I felt so frustrated about the lack of consistency in diagnosis and plan of care and just overall process from practitioner to practitioner. I was in PT school at the time when my back got really, really bad. And I had access to, high level professors and people who've been in the field for so many years, and even spine specialists. And everybody would tell me something different, some different advice, and nothing was really helping. So at that point, I was just really curious about how to actually, not only for myself, but for other people, like what are other people doing about it? And what does the research say? And what does some people with experience have to say? And what are maybe other athletes, what have they gone through? And again, it started with just me being really curious about what information was out there. So once I got in this rabbit hole, we pretty much went back to 3,000 years ago to see like how did we form the beliefs about back pain? How has the science evolved? How has the field evolved in terms of rehabilitation for back injuries, and where are we now actually? Because what we get taught in school most of the time is pretty outdated, because they're trying to just teach students or challenge students to retain information in short periods of time. And they're looking out for themselves in the sense that they're preparing us to pass boards. So it's not that it's malicious or anything, but the curriculum is slightly outdated. So I wanted to see what did the current research actually say? And in what direction is it moving? So that was the inspiration to write the book. I ended up writing a 12-week long program it was called at that time Back Under the Bar, that I inputted into the hybrid software and everything. And I never released it until now. I never released it because back pain, the main issue with especially persistent pain is that you have to educate people on what it actually means and what it doesn't mean, and what are the tools and strategies that they're going to need moving forward. So we have to move away from the structural and mechanistic focus of, okay, let's fix what's broken. Okay, let's look under an MRI, let's look under an X-ray, and let's see which of the structures is damaged, which one has degeneration, which disc is herniated. And we have to move away from that, from the structural view, and we have to be a little bit more holistic and all-encompassing and consider the person that's in front of you and all the other factors that influence someone's relationship with pain. So essentially there's two camps. There's the structural, mechanical, and then there's the biopsychosocial. And I'm the type of person that I will never subscribe 100% to anything. I like to pick and choose what I like and try it out for myself and try it out on other people and then form my own opinion based on that. So, within that, I had to come up with either a PDF or something to explain people what these two worlds, what they mean and how they coexist, and what we can take from both of them in order to improve our injuries. So a 15-page long PDF turned into a 20-page long PDF, into a 30-page long PDF, and eventually I was like, okay. And I still have a lot more to say. So I think I'm just going to turn this into a book, and it be kind of the assistant educational material for the program that I wrote. So it took about 2 years to write and publish and all of that, and now it's out.
Congratulations. Like writing a book is no easy thing. I just finished my first ever book. And I talk about in the very first, the introduction, I say, it took me a year to figure out what I didn't want to say and a year to figure out what I needed to say. It's such a hard thing, right? But I'm always super proud of people that actually go that extra mile and complete it, because well done for completing it. If I was to get your book right now and open it up to any chapter or page and that you're most proud of, that you think that has the most information in there, I know the whole book's filled with information, but one that could give me a renewed perspective, which page or chapter could I turn to?
That's an interesting question. I think the one that talks about what pain actually is. That one's pretty. Either the chapter where we debunk a bunch of myths about back pain. It's just a bunch of things that you're told, in a doctor's office, and we pretty much disprove them with evidence, with science. That one's interesting because there's a lot of just commonly held beliefs about back pain that are just so misleading and wrong. So I think that one's interesting, and then actually understanding what pain is and how it actually works. I would say those two.
Pain's not all in the mind, right?
That's my biggest pet peeve, man. If somebody says that, just run the opposite way.
Because there's pain. You got your body's telling you something. If your back's hurting, or if any other area of your body's sore, it's more than just a mental thing.
It's not in your head. It's not. It's definitely real. Pain is definitely real.
Yeah, 100%.
It's just not always tied to structural damage. That's what we need to understand. We know based on just MRIs that 56% of individuals between the age of 20 and 30 have asymptomatic disc herniations, and that number spikes all the way up to like 84% for 90-year-olds. So you don't have to, pain can exist in the presence or absence of something being wrong. And that's important. And understanding the factors that influence pain is the first step towards managing them. Because we can sit down here and play the Sherlock Holmes of injuries, and I'll poke you around and I'll make something up and I'll tell you that your leg length is 1 millimeter higher on one leg than the other, and that's the cause of your pain. But in reality, like there are things that influence your perception of pain and that influence your recovery a lot more. In terms of pain, the easiest way that I can explain it is pain is just like a smoke alarm. And I took this it's actually a free PDF from Greg Lehman. You can find it at greglehman.com. It's amazing information. But pain is like a smoke alarm. It doesn't really tell you whether there's danger or not. It's an alarm. It doesn't tell you about the severity of it. And sometimes it goes off for no reason at all. So if, have you ever gone to an Airbnb or even maybe in your own house and you're cooking bacon and the alarm goes off?
Yep.
Or sometimes maybe you just put oil in a pan and that is enough smoke for the alarm to go off. So that's called sensitivity. When the alarm is too sensitive to the input that it's receiving, it'll result in an outcome that doesn't necessarily tie to what is actually occurring. So in terms of pain, we got to find ways to turn down the sensitivity of the alarm, right? So forgot where I was going with this, but yeah, so it's one of the things to consider. It's one of the things to consider about pain is what are the factors that play into people's perceptions of pain is your environment, your culture, your previous beliefs, your previous experiences with an injury or in a particular situation or with a movement. And so you got to find ways to either remove some of those stimulus or make that cup bigger so you can take more of that. So you either increase your tolerance and your capacity for those things or you remove those things so that you can desensitize that alarm over time.
Is it a combination of eating the right amount of food, getting physiotherapy, and also doing exercises? Is it a combination of all those three?
As far as what goes?
To heal pain in specific areas or just in general healing pain?
Look, it starts with a conversation. Like education should be at the core of a therapy session. So it starts with a conversation, starts with addressing people's fears, starts with giving them the right information, starts with making them feel comfortable about their injury as much as possible and try to normalize that. Look, what's the first thing I saw one time when I walked into a sports medicine doctor's office was a model of a spine and the disc was outside of it, was laying out of it. Subconsciously, just by looking at that, you're like, oh, fuck. Maybe my disc slipped so far out that it's just sitting in my stomach inside of me. It's just subconsciously, it's a very kind of like fear-mongering thing. So starting with having the right narrative and educating our patients about their injury in a way that doesn't scare them and doesn't move them away from movement. And then from there, it goes to delivering a positive movement experience. We don't know for a fact which treatment is the best treatment. We don't know if it's a lack of stability. We don't know if it's a leg length discrepancy. We don't know. That's the truth. We really don't know. What we do know is that there's a hurt, there's something hurting, and there's some things that don't hurt, some things that hurt, and that is it. So our job as therapists should be, look, let's find a way to keep you moving and keep you involved in the things that bring meaning to your life that you love to do. And just try to find a way to keep you pushing forward instead of getting into that like deconditioning fear catastrophizing loop, negative feedback loop, where you're just getting worse and worse and more fearful of moving. You're starting to limit your amount of movement variability. You're starting to decondition aerobically and strength and losing muscle and all that stuff. So we want to move you away from that. Anything that moves you in the other direction is a good therapy. Anything. You can do bird dog, dead bug, side planks. You can walk backwards. You can push a sled. You can pull a sled. You can, I don't know. It doesn't matter. Just keep moving. Avoid being deconditioned. Avoid trying not to or surround yourself with therapists and with a team that doesn't make you afraid of the injury and doesn't try to blow it up in your mind. And it'll work, really. In time, we know that time heals it all. Most back injuries resolve on their own, given the right amount of time. And that's another thing. It's like how much time it takes me to recover from a back injury is different than how much time it takes you. Depends on, how long did you have the pain? How long were you in pain for? And what was, again, previous experience with pain? What's your stress level like? What's your nutrition like? How do you sleep? It's all of these things. And we all heal at different rates. So if you give an injury enough time and you really stay off of the things that make it worse, it sounds like common sense, but trust me, what people do is that they jump from therapist to therapist until they get the answer that they want, which if you're an athlete, you want somebody to tell you to keep training. And until you get that answer, you don't stop. And then you get that answer and you'll keep training and you'll keep running against the same exact wall. So at some point, there comes a time where you really have to take your foot off the gas and really let things calm down. And I'm not saying forever. I'm saying let things calm down and then slowly reintroduce the movements that you once couldn't do in a way that's safe and not threatening for your body and your mind.
This is gold. This is gold. You went off there. I love it. I have a back injury as well. Like when I was younger, a fat kid jumped on my back and literally my 11th, 12th and 13th ribs all popped out and it's like they always do it if I don't exercise that area, like if I don't strengthen it. Like it's gotten better over the years, but oftentimes like if my posture or if I've had a strenuous day, I notice that I've got lower back pain and I'm like, oh great, now I've got to do more exercise or I've got to see a physiotherapist to help support it. So I love how you explained all that for me, like, and for those people that actually are struggling with back pain. So it's great information. Two more final questions for you. I feel like I can talk to you for ages, but this one's more of a fun one. What would you say has been the weirdest food combination you've ever tried?
Weirdest food combination I've ever tried. Okay, so there's this dish called arepa. It's a Venezuelan dish. It's kind of like this corn dough that you mix with water and then you put in the pan, and it's really crispy on the outside and soft on the inside, and it's really nice. But it's supposed to be like a salty dish, right? Like usually people eat it with cheese and ham or chicken or avocado, stuff like that. But I used to love putting chocolate in it.
Yes.
So I would like melt a whole chocolate bar. I would cook it, it'd be sweltering hot, cut it in the middle, put a massive chunk of chocolate in there and close it and then eat it. It was amazing.
Yes. The reason why I'm saying that is I dated two Latinas, so I know the food. Yeah. What do you call it? Ecuadorian food and far out, forget any other country. But it was basically a similar thing. I fell in love with empanadas as well. Other dish, it had cheese in it, but then it was also like this sugar on top. Okay. It worked. Like it was a savory, sweet, doughy sort of combination.
I'm into that. When it's both sweet and savory, it's the best.
Yeah, tell me about it. Like it just got me. I still miss those damn empanadas today. I want them. Okay, so I'm going to try and get my brain out of the food gutter right now and focus. But my final question for you is my all-time favorite question. It's a hypothetical one, so I want you to imagine with me for a moment that you've been able to reach the age of 100. All your friends and your family have decided to put together a film for you of everything you've ever said and everything you've ever done. Don't ask me how in the world they got it, or we'll call it magic for the sake of an argument. They've been able to get it and show it to you on your 100th birthday. What do you want that film to say and to show about your life?
I think it'd be a mix of, again, personal, selfish goals. A lot of them probably tied to my athletic career, things that I've achieved physically, because they've always been part of my really big part of my identity, and they've always been really important to me. So I think it'd be a mix of that plus impressive things I've achieved with my business. I like you, I come up with like ideas all the time. And I always say there's going to be one day that I'm going to come up with something that's like absolutely revolutionary, and that's going to, sell for millions and millions of dollars. So something like that. And then there has to be some very big humanitarian, thing that I do to help a lot of people, whether it's like my own non-for-profit or man, even just like positively impacting the people's lives from friends or people that are around me. It's a challenge. But yeah, I think that would be it. Athletic goal or athletic achievements, business achievements, and then having a positive impact in the world. That's it.
It'd be a great film to watch. Steffi, where can people find you, connect with you, buy your new book, and learn more about you?
You guys can find me on Instagram or YouTube at Stefi Cohen, and anything related to hybrid is hybridperformancemethod.com. You can find everything there, including the Back in Motion book under the Back in Motion tag.
Well, I just want to say thank you so much for your time, your advice and your wisdom. It's very helpful, not only to me, but I know that someone listening to this is going to be inspired by your journey and everything that you're doing in the world. So thank you so much for coming on the Storybox podcast today.
Thank you so much for having me.